Jamie Walker McCall. You're the production designer for Pose, which is ending after 3 seasons. And it's a highly emotional show with a strong sense of community on screen. So first off, was it emotional to wrap up production on it after 3 seasons?
It definitely was. I mean, it's you're all in it together for so many years. And we had a lot of the same crew and, of course, all the same actors. And it really is a big family once, at the end. So it was very hard to see everybody go and to move on to their next projects. It was definitely bittersweet.
And the show, from the beginning spanned, the late 1980s, and in this final season moves it into the mid 90s. What kind of subtle style changes go along with kind of evolving the show year by year? To what extent is that a factor?
Well, those time periods in New York really did change a lot, actually, with Giuliani and everything, and the cleanup. And so we went from like a really gritty start, and then slowly each, season and episode really started to dial it back depending on what was happening at that point. We had levels of, I had different levels of trash, like amounts, like this is like a DEFCON 5 where you're going into, Miss Orlando's neighborhood. So we want to really dress it up a lot and really make that character feel like the neighborhood she was in at that time period.
And capturing New York City with period accuracy over the course of the whole series, keeping continuity, keeping anachronism out. How challenging is that, just in general?
Beyond challenging. I feel like every single day there was a new digital pop-up happening somewhere that we had to contend with. Something too that, Mila Kalevich was always talking about too are the trees. There weren't trees in New York at this time period. That was something that later was added. And so it was trees. It was the digital, plug your iPhone in, the parking meters, or just the bikes. Every day there was something. And the city was great to work with because they let us remove a lot of things or cover them temporarily. But it was very challenging and increasingly challenging each season.
And with the ball scene being so important to the show, and this final season obviously having some very climactic ones, some have aired, some have not yet aired, as we're talking now. Was it sort of like a bigger undertaking, a lot of these, those productions, and from the art department sense, like what went into those compared to previous seasons?
Normally all the balls usually take place in inside in our ballroom that we ended up building season 2. This year we started out with an exterior one for COVID purposes, try to get it outside and be in an open air environment. And that just presented its own challenges of weather and, how to light it and even design it. And, but most of those ballrooms we actually did at the end of the season. We did a whole week's worth of ballroom scenes that were to play throughout the entire season. So pretty much every ballroom scene you see was shot the last week of filming.
And part of the story, I don't want to spoil any of the specific story, but there are elements later in the season that does get to explore more extravagant styles and more extravagant locations. How was that as a change? Given a lot of this story is about characters struggling and persevering, and then you've got the ability to kind of go big in a different way.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, you want to see these people strive and get ahead. And then finally, there are some very successful moments coming up in the show, and that everyone is rooting for. And I think in having it be the last season, this is something that everyone is going to be very excited about to see for the characters. And it was, it was a nice change from going from the gritty New York to this elevated part of New York, which a lot of people don't get to see, especially these ladies. So it was fun. It was fun to design those certain elements for them.
And a lot of the show with that visual opulent joy of like the balls, and and these characters' personalities. Then you get a lot of the the more kind of grounded, down to earth reality moments, like when you're in the hospital, and the show spends a lot of time in the hospital.
Mhm.
What's it like, developing that location and sort of contrasting it with the kind of vibrancy of these characters outside?
Well, I think that's what, the juxtaposition of their their fanciful, they can be whoever they want to be in the ballroom, but at the, then you're in the hospital and they're dealing with HIV and the loss of people on a day to day. And just putting them in that environment is the grounding moment, I think, for the show, where it's like these, as fun and fantastic as the balls are, these are real human beings experiencing these terrible times, and I feel like that's the happy medium between the two show, where it keeps the show grounded and keeps these characters real for the viewers.
And there's so much lived-in sense of these locations, especially Pretel's house, apartment, to the house of Evangelista. Like what kind of little personal details go into like set decoration in terms of expressing the characters' lived lives, and adding those little details that make it feel like a place people have called home.
We brought some elements to some of the sets, like back to House of Evangelista, from other homes where they have lived before. In the first season, when Angel had her apartment that Stan got her, we took, the little pink boombox and put that on top of the fridge. Like that was the one thing she took from that moment in her life, and put that in there. The House of Evangelista has those broken window panes right in the dining room, which, every season I'm like, Ryan, can we please get rid of them? And he's like, no, these are, this is something that that he always wanted to keep them, again, kind of grounded. And this is something that they're not going to spend their money to fix this. This is just going to stay, and because it is who they are, they're going to spend their money on things that, to survive. So it's just little elements like that we more found objects, or something that they've taken from their home growing up that we had around the apartments.
And we get to see not just where these characters are in the present, but in a couple of cases where these characters have been in their past. We get some flashbacks into characters' backgrounds. How is it creating that contrast of for instance Pretel, where he grew up, where his family is, comparing that to kind of this out loud life that he's living in the present day?
It's a lot of working with Janet and Steven, the writers on this, to see what the backstory that they've created for these characters. And really, and Lady J as well, like they always put like certain elements of themselves into the characters. So they're speaking from the heart. And that's really fun for production design, because you really get to see an insight one-on-one, like firsthand of this character's culture and background, and how why the writers have chosen to write them in a certain way, or what's their the psychology behind this character. And that's really fun to kind of get into that, and you see a little peek into what has made them become who they are, which was really interesting and enlightening.
And like a lot of productions, TV, film, and otherwise, COVID did interfere with delay the production for a show that's so much about communal spaces and community. What was it like coming back and shooting with like new protocols, but also creating still the sense of of family like that you would see on screen?
Well, there was, we tried to keep the main cast, and they were, tested, and, trying to keep everybody safe, as all actors are in this environment. Like I said, we had to shoot the ballroom scenes all at the end of the season to hopefully have lighter restrictions. One thing that kind of helped is that a lot of our locations were currently not in business. So a lot of the restaurants and things like that we go to, it was great. It was actually a big help because then you could space people apart. They're not working, we had our own characters in there and people working in there. So that kind of helped, everything sadly for everyone else being shut down helped a little bit in the film community so that we could go into these places and not be, have to deal with a bunch of people working, or hotels were, not a lot of employees around. So that kind of helped us keep our little bubble just to the show.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your work throughout the seasons on Pose, and for all of the episodes yet to be aired as people are watching this. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll bring you back in for you to join our group chat.
Of course. Thanks for having me.